Good morning. Good morning. We are here for our March 5th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting. All members of the Policy Committee meeting are present, or Policy Committee are present. We have a fairly large agenda, I'll say, which is kind of getting minimized month after month. I think we've been doing a pretty good job of taking through some of these NISBA updates and then anything else that comes up. So just to recap what happened in the March board meeting, we were able to adopt revisions to 2111 and 2510. 2111 is board member authority and 2510, I believe, is broadcast, new board member orientation. So those are now complete. In the March board meeting, we also had a discussion about video conferencing of board meetings, which is 2325. And we received feedback from the board that they'd like us to work up a resolution which would allow for board member participation under extraordinary circumstances. This was a change in the law in 2023, well, first post-COVID and then in 2023. At the time that law passed as a board, different composition of the board, we had decided not to pursue that. And after further discussion, the board wants us to take another look. So we'll work on that as well. And we also had 2382 for a first read, and there was no comments on that. So I think that one, Frank, I think for the April meeting, we should just flag that as a second read.
Okay.
And finish that one.
Just going back to the resolution component, would you like me to speak to council about preparing a resolution first and drafting one for us based off of the policy?
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what policy number was that? Just really?
That policy is 2325.
Okay. I'll send council the draft policy and then just ask them to look at drafting a resolution so that way when we're ready to look at it, we have it.
Can I ask a question about that one? Which it seems, and I may have been wrong, but so the last policy meeting, I left with the understanding that that these simultaneous broadcasting, we'll call it, I guess, was going to be a technical hurdle.
I still think it is.
And there, so there still is, it may at least be some concern about that.
My one recommendation is when we were talking about this, I was thinking about it is we'll have to not do this and we'll time it accordingly to where we feel the technology would be. So like we might have to put in, if the board says, yes, we want to do this, we're going to have to say July 1st or, September 30th. I think that, respectfully, the technology has not worked, right? So, and if we're going to rely on that as a streaming component to be able to comply with our policy,
Yeah.
Which if we don't, people are going to say we're negligent. It makes me very, very nervous. So I want to make sure that we have backups to backups and everything appropriately ready. So we are not creating an issue when things go bad.
Yeah, I think we could do this in as low tech a way as possible, right? Like we could use Google Meet and the board member and any member of the public who wants to join just joins the
As
meet.
long as we have Wi-Fi that works or internet.
Yeah. That's the problem here, right?
Yeah.
But for the public, it's, if you have internet at home, you should be able to join a Google Meet.
The other thing that was raised
Google
was,
doesn't allow you to stop people and allow for full comment or not. So WebEx is a little bit better in that regard because what it does is it will block everybody for a full time period. And then when you open comment, it will allow you to go into a queue to speak. So it gives a little bit more control to somebody.
Yeah.
Google, on the other hand, it's open mic the whole time unless you're muting. If you have 100 people at a meeting watching it, it can be very difficult to manage. So just technical wise, I've seen that.
is hardwiring a possibility?
Lonnie said it was. Because I asked him, I thought he was gonna hardwire that meeting, he said, like, there was supposed to be a hardwire for me, because I was very nervous about it
Mhm.
occurring again. So I think hardwiring is a possibility.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, we've been having our meetings in the LGI, but if
Yeah, I
we
think
need to have them somewhere else to allow for that, we could do that.
it's doable. I don't think that's, like you said, as low tech as possible. We could easily do that.
So, okay, so that makes sense to me, so.
And it could possibly allow us to not have cameras at all, because if you're streaming through a WebEx and it's already there, that can be your video.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you just hit record.
You just hit record and everybody has a computer in front of them, and then done that. There's
Yeah,
positive and negative.
yeah, or you can still use the owl, right?
Yeah, we don't use the owl anymore for recording, because it doesn't have good sound.
But for video? Are we using it?
No, the owl is only for someone to Skype into the meeting or come into it.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. All right, so, yeah, so next April board meeting, potentially we can, review 23, 25 with the resolution. If we have it at that point. I don't want to put
Yeah.
time pressure on Ryan, but if we have it, let's plan for that for the April. Policy meeting.
Yep.
And I think you guys are following what I'm doing with the agenda. Like, I'm just adding notes in the agenda as we.
Yep.
It helps me because otherwise keeping track of all this is kind of difficult. All right, and then 2160. That is the policy that we had a lot of questions about. It's school district officer and employee code of ethics. This is the one where we had a ton of other, I don't even know that it was exhibits, but it was more like our policy manual had different sections that were published independently. And Jess reached out to NISBA for us. I don't know if anyone saw the response.
I did not know.
No,
She may have just sent it to me, so
She may
let me share that with everybody right now. Okay, so basically the response that came back from NISBA is, I think what may have happened is that the subsections were supposed to be archived when the most recent policy was adopted. This is the NISBA person opining on what happened with ours.
Yeah.
I believe this to be the case because there's a 2160 in the archive area that says intentionally left blank. So I think that was the header page and the subsections contained the rest of the policy originally. Then in May 2022, policy 2160 was revised with the one currently posted, but the subsections were not archived when they should have been. We can move them to the archive if you agree. You could include it as an information item in the next meeting. So I think that's kind of where we all ended up, was we thought that the subsections were duplicative for the most part of what was in the policy. So that makes sense to me. I think that's what we should do. I can't recall, and I think we should look at it again, whether we made any edits to 2160 when we were reviewing it.
which one is the working document?
Yeah, that's why we're gonna go into the folder. So it should be the draft policy 2160 that has a February 4, 2025 date. So this policy was raised at our December board meeting by a community member. And it was last revised by the policy committee and amendments adopted by the board May 9th of 2022. So we have looked at it fairly recently. We can take another kind of quick look at it to see if we think there's anything that requires an amendment. I did look at it, and did not really see anything.
Is the NISBA sample policy that's in that same folder, those have already been incorporated
Yeah,
into,
that-
okay,
Yeah, that
Great.
is the May revision,
gotcha.
May 2022 revision that was adopted by the board.
Mhm.
So I say we just walk through it and see if
Sure.
there's anything that jumps out at us. But I think it's good. All right, so school district officer and employee code of ethics. The Board of Education is committed to avoiding any situation in which the existence of conflicting interests of any board member, officer, or employee may call into question the integrity of the management or operation of the school district.
Sorry, we're using it as the draft.
No,
No, the draft policy 2160.
So draft. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
Do something.
and,
Barbara, would you like me to put up?
Yeah, would you? That'd be great, because once again, it will not let me connect.
Oh,
So I'm
sorry.
really sorry.
So, yeah, if I actually do what I'm supposed to, following Trisha's model, in the folder will be a policy called draft policy. That's the kind of the working draft
okay,
for edits. And I think I caught us up on that for this meeting, for all the ones that we're gonna look at. I know I haven't been great in prior meetings. Okay, the board recognizes that sound ethical standards of conduct serve to increase the effectiveness of district officers and staff as educators and public employees in the community. Adherence to a code of ethics promotes public policy, public confidence in the schools, and furthers the attainment of district goals. The board also recognizes its obligation to adopt a code of ethics, setting forth the standards of conduct required of all board members, district officers, and employees under the provisions of the general municipal law. Therefore, every board member, officer, and employee of the district, whether paid or unpaid, shall adhere to the following code of ethics. The next section covers statutory conflicts of interest. And this section we discussed extensively when we changed this policy back in 2022. We have definitions here for contracts and then interest. No board member, officer, or employee shall have an interest, i.e. received a direct or indirect benefit as a result of a contract with the district in. And then there's a number of categories. Looks like we need to clean up some of the numbering here. I want to look if that's what it looks like in our current policy. All right, so let's see. Yeah, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Look, maybe we can clean.
Is that in our current policy too?
Yeah,
Oh my
I just
goodness.
went on that. Yeah, I
You want me
just.
to call that 5? I can.
No, I think it's a separate,
yeah, and then we've
it's
got,
a separate thing, so,
So you think it's,
so I think it's a separate section, or we need a header.
it's interesting.
yeah,
Or we just take out the numbers.
I think we can come up with a,
Better, right?
board
It's like,
members, or it's not just board members, right, but, board members, officers, or employees, will adhere to the following. Something like that. Like just do like a quick heading and then
Yeah.
you're good, right?
yeah, I just did it. You fix it, I don't know what you want.
Yeah, I'll just follow the way we have it above, board members. Office. And employees will adhere to the following. Then we have gifts. I'm just gonna move that heading out a little bit, Frank.
No, please.
Okay, so gifts, this $75 value was hotly debated last time.
That's gifts for the district too, for teachers, admin,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, I was probably the only one who was of the opinion that $75 was too high. I was outvoted. So we can leave it, unless anyone else
It's
feels
a
strongly
recommendation.
that I was right. Okay, I assume everyone's just kind of reading along,
Mhm.
since I'm not reading the whole thing. Confidential information, board member, officer, employee shall not disclose confidential information acquired by them in the course of their official duties or use such information to further their personal interest. Representation before the board. Basically, you can't get compensated by any decision before the board. Disclosure of interest in matters before the board. So this, we spent a lot of time talking about this last time too, in terms of, at the time, like I was a board member of New Scotland Soccer Club too. So after we reviewed this policy, we all agreed that, like, even though generally there's nothing controversial that comes up in those contracts, that, like, because I had that other association, I would recuse from those types of things. And that the disclosure must be in writing. So the way that we handled that was, just by emailing Jessica as the board clerk, to apprise her of the, it's not quite a conflict, but the other association. Investments, pretty straightforward. Private employment, future employment, involvement with charitable organizations, that's kind of the same, same as above. Distribution of the code of ethics. Superintendent shall cause a copy of this code of ethics to be distributed to every member of the board, officer, employee of the district. I don't know that we've done that.
Yeah, we put it in the policy handbook. We did not do a good job.
For the employees, we did, but for like new board members, I don't think we, unless it's included in Jessica's onboarding.
No, I feel like there was, I mean, there's not a hard copy, but there is the, the information that
The
this is available and you are expected to be familiar with it.
Well, that makes me happy.
Okay, good.
I mean, I wouldn't imagine that we would get a hard copy.
All right, then we have sections on penalties. Fined, suspended, removed from office or employment, as the case may be, in the manner provided by law. Okay, I think that's pretty standard. Okay, I think that one, minor stuff, but
We're good for first?
we're good for a revision.
Yeah.
And then we will archive the sections, I guess. Let me look at how it was
Do we just-
described.
Do we just adopt this and then therefore we just nullify everything else?
Yeah, so.
Or do we have to actually archive them?
The NISBA advice just says you can move them to the archive and include it as an information item in the next meeting.
Okay.
So it sounds like we're just archiving the subsections.
All right, so I'm gonna
I don't know that it seems like it's a revision, so we should have the board vote, but.
Yeah,
Or it sounds to me what they're saying is that back in May of 22, when you adopted the policy that you did,
Right.
it was minus those subsections. And so the fact that they're just still hanging out on the website is
Right.
clerical.
I mean, I suppose we could look back on the meeting
I
minutes
don't,
and.
I think
how about this?
Honestly, I think it was an oversight
Yeah.
back in
I would
2022.
agree.
Yeah.
I don't think we even realized that those were there.
So what I'm gonna say, Jess, is, I have it up here, so
Mhm.
we are going to put this on the April meeting. Revision, vote. The sections that are under it, board docs can be archived. Do you wanna wait until after we do the final vote on this, or do you just think she can archive it now?
It can be archived now.
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll just advise.
If it's not part of the policy, then they should be moved.
Okay, so we're just gonna say subsections currently
So then for
Shall we-
2160, it will only be
60.
the policy and no subsections, correct?
Yeah, right.
Good.
Okay, good. So that's good.
And that is.
Right.
Makes sense. All right.
Okay. Okay, and then the next one that we have on our list is 1740 relations with non-public schools. So this is a NISBA update. They did a couple of things. Our current policy, by the way, is titled Textbook Policy, including non-public schools. This relations with non-public schools draft by NISBA is broader than just textbooks. And the way that they wrote this update is to kind of remove legal references within the text of the document, but to highlight that the district is required to do certain things. And then there's an optional section which follows along with the discussion we had at our last meeting about whether non-public school students should be permitted to participate in certain extracurricular activities. So there is a paragraph in there in the draft addressing that. So when we get to it, we can discuss it. But I think this will be an amendment to our current 1740 that we can just kind of replace. Like, I don't think we need to look much at our 1740. It's in there. It's just that this NISBA update is much broader. So we have if you go into the folder, there is a draft policy 1740. That's the working draft. So I've got it up to, so relationship with non-public schools is the title. Policy has been updated to summarize all the programs and services that districts are required to provide to non-public school students. In addition, the state education department's guidance advises that the board may adopt a policy to permit non-public students to participate in the district's school-sponsored club activities. If we choose to do this, there's a section, as I said. There's a note, the policy reflects requirements of the education law about apportioning hardware and technology to non-public schools. I don't know that this has been an issue where basically it's saying, like, if you have enough money, you give it out to everybody. If you don't, there's a mechanism for apportioning certain hardware and technology. Okay, so here we can jump in. In recognition of its responsibility under state law and regulation, the Board of Education will make available required public school materials, equipment, and services to resident students who attend non-public schools. For purposes of this policy, parent includes parent, guardian, or person in parental relation. Next section is textbook loan. The board, and again, this is like removing the legal references and just saying is required. The board is required to purchase and to loan upon individual request textbooks to all children residing in the district who are attending grades K through 12 in any public or non-public school which complies with compulsory education law. So it is also understood that the textbooks must be loaned free to the children, but boards may make reasonable rules and regulations regarding such loans. Therefore, the following rules and regulations govern the loan of textbooks to residents of the district attending non-public schools. Textbooks remain property of the district. Textbooks are returned at the end of the non-public school year. If lost or destroyed, the textbooks are paid for in the same fashion as students attending district schools. This next section is all new. I can keep reading if you all want. You're getting that? It's in here.
As a practical matter, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What do we do this? I mean, obviously we would if the occasion arose,
Yeah,
but
we do.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, we have textbooks going out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Not often.
Okay.
In another district I was in, we were giving them out all the time.
Okay.
It just depends, but
And it's for the students' use in
yeah,
a non-public school that they.
it's not as much as it used to be.
Okay.
But there is a couple times where Karen has said, oh, we got a textbook going out or we got a book going out, but it's not as much. Like 10 years ago, it was very, very common, but now that a lot of things are all.
As a practical matter, so it isn't, it more chances than not, it's not going to be a book that we use here. It's the book that student uses at the non.
That could be it.
Correct.
I'm not specifically involved in all the time
Okay.
because Karen really does handle that. Please go
I
ahead.
can address some of
Yes.
it since I had a
Okay.
child.
But we
in
do,
non-public school.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's all managed for the most part through BOCES.
BOCES does it all for us.
So, yeah, so BOCES will get the list, we have to register, like there's a website through BOCES and they'll send you the link, saying, if your child's attending this non-public school, you have to register for the textbooks, you tell them who your student is, you pick the school, and then they know from that school, based on what classes they're in, which books to provide.
And it's a BOCES service that we pay for.
Yeah, and then there's a process through BOCES at the end of the year to return those textbooks every year.
And sometimes they come back to the district.
Yeah,
They're in really bad shape.
So as a general matter, do non-public schools as a rule by default not provide their own books, or is this kind of the exception to the rule?
some, I will say, at least in my child's case, most of the books, like the actual textbook books came through BOCES.
Okay.
There might be other assigned materials that we were required to purchase.
Interesting. No, I just, as a matter of like how it actually applied in practice.
I wouldn't
was
be as
curious
familiar
about
as it with you, so thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so the top of this page 2, we've got 3 new paragraphs. I didn't see really anything in here that requires comment. It kind of lays out the way this is written, it appears to put more of this, excuse me, responsibility on the district, but like I said, it's a service that we're currently using BOCES for, and really the obligations on the district are next to none.
Gotcha.
Everything,
We just paid.
yeah, everything was handled through BOCES. Okay, so the next section has to deal with the instructional computer hardware and software loan. Most of this is not new. The only new paragraph sets up the process for making a request for instructional computer hardware and software. I don't think, this is not a BOCES process. This was, at least in my child's case, was handled through the school
Mhm.
itself. So like, we have a policy here, every kid gets a Chromebook, same thing in the other school, but that was provided by the school,
Yep.
that school, not our school. But I think
if someone needs a loan, we can loan it out.
yeah, like if
Yeah.
the non-public schools, I think, could change their policy under this
Yep.
law and say, no, the home district has to provide it and we have to provide it. Okay, library materials.
And I guess the other thing, not to put too fine a point on it, but for people watching at home, this is something that's dictated by state law.
Yeah.
Correct.
Not, okay.
Yep.
Just want to make that.
Yeah, it's
Same
not
with-
optional.
Same with, special ed services, right? Like we spend roughly $250,000 in medical services for out of, or more. I was just looking at the budget, cause maybe it's 4. It might be 400. Anyways, we spend a lot of money
It's not
on
gonna help.
outsourced services for medical, for nurses or for anything, because we have to pay a portion of those things as part of it. So, no, that is,
Okay.
all regulation.
Okay, the next section is library materials. Again, these are legal requirements under the education law. Library materials owned or acquired by the district are required to be made available on an equitable basis to students in grades K through 12 attending non-public schools located within the district. So this is a little tricky because, and this has come up before, we don't have a non-public K through 12 school located in our district. We have been, as a matter of practice, incorporating these provisions that address having a non-public school within the district,
Just in case.
just in case. You'll see when we get to another policy, though, that it's a little tricky.
Is it the Title One?
It's on our list for today.
Yeah. it's-
Mhm.
We don't, is that the funding equalization?
It's,
We don't do it, because we don't have to, but we still have to send in a report. I'll explain some. of
yeah,
this.
yeah, when
Yep.
we get to it, I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Yeah,
that
no,
I
there's
did
some
all
very
these
tricky stuff when you have,
The other night.
when you have it within district, there's a lot of different conversations that have to go.
Yeah, hang on. Now it's gonna bug me until I look. Unsafe school transfer choice.
Yeah.
8140.
Yeah, you have to be, identified as an unsafe school as well.
Yeah, so there's a note in this
Yeah.
NISBA, we'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll talk about
But
it.
basically it says, if you don't have a non-public school within your district, do not adopt this policy. And we do have a policy though, so I'll explain when we get
Oh,
there,
yeah. that's
if
good.
we get there. But in general, like I said, as a matter of practice, we've been adding these paragraphs in the event that they might
Yeah.
apply at some point in the future.
Is that new though, the advice of not to incorporate it? Or do you know what I mean, have we been incorporating it before just in case and now they're telling you, hey, don't do it?
No, so this one specific NISBA update policy, they're saying, if you don't do not adopt this policy because it's dependent on having another policy in the
Understood.
district.
Previous policies.
But when we get to that one, you'll see that there's other language in there that sort of goes beyond, not having another
So the,
non-public school in your district. So, and that's the language
Okay.
we currently
Alright.
have in a policy.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a little confusing, but anyway, I think for purposes of this one, it's fine, right? And this section is specific to library materials.
Mhm.
Okay, special education services, again, legally required. District must provide education for students with disabilities enrolled in non-public schools located within the district, regardless of whether such students are residents of the district upon written request of the parent. So doesn't really apply to us. We don't have another school within the district that's not public. At some point it could. Career education and services for gifted students. Same type of provision. And then the procedure for how to make a request. Health and welfare services, also legally required. Just to,
As I was saying.
yeah, exactly. I don't think there's anything to discuss there. Transportation, district will provide transportation. We already do that. Okay, the next section is the participation in extracurricular activities. So when I was looking at this, I ended up taking a look at our homeschooled students policy just to see like how we treat homeschooled students who want to participate in extracurricular versus non-public school students. And we do allow everything that's in here for homeschooled students. So keep that in mind as we discuss. Okay, so the board recognizes that students attending non-public schools are not entitled to participate in interscholastic or intramural sports. I think that's the law, right, in New York. So, and that it also exists in the homeschool student policy. However, and this is up for discussion, the board will permit such students to participate in certain other school-sponsored extracurricular activities. And we have options here if they're residents in the district, if the non-public school is located in the district, doesn't apply to us. Or C, if either the student resides in the district or non-public school is located in the district. So really our only option is if they are residents of the district. The district may request certification from the non-public school that all immunization requirements have been met. Specifically, the board will permit non-public students to, and there's 3 different bullets here that we can select from or amend. These 3 bullets currently exist in the homeschool student policy. And again, this is optional language, so we could make a change. We could choose to not be consistent, which is what we are now.
What's the homeschool state? Does it allow non-credit organized school activities such as clubs?
Yeah, so here, I'll pull it up.
Yeah. So maybe if we use the 2 of them to have that conversation. Because if you are going to allow all of that, then
I've got an e-
or you change it, right? And you amend the other one at the same time.
I mean, I've got kind of equal protection-ish kind of concerns. I mean, 'cause I don't see a meaningful distinction between the two,
Homeschool.
homeschool and non-public, in terms of a meaningful distinction on which to say one gets to engage in these activities and one doesn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to do this,
Yeah.
you
No,
might
I
have
think
to
it's gotta
take
be-
both of them together.
It's gotta be consistent
Yeah.
one way or the other.
That's what.
all
Thank
or
you for
nothing.
checking that because
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, this issue was
What's the
raised to me
homeschool number?
by, it's 1741
Thank you.
by a neighbor whose children attend a non-public school outside the district.
One thing I would recommend that we do, because I know some people really are interested in ski club, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, is we have 2 buses that go to ski club. I cannot do more than 2 buses, right? Because the district pays for those buses to go and everything else. And there's a good chance that in the future I might have to cut it down to 1, depending on drivers. So I would only also state that you may want to put a stipulation on anything you do is saying home students first get, if there's a slot or a specific area, you might want to state home students get that, or you put in a lottery system for that into the policy, because there might come a time where we have to limit it down to 60 students or 80 students, depending on how it
Yeah,
works. So just something to think about if you're doing that.
Yeah, so in the homeschool students,
I don't have
Specifically-
policies.
it's in the, I'm just looking on our online policy
Oh,
manual.
okay. Yeah, I just,
But it's not one that we have in our,
yes, I just checked our thing about that.
no, so on the, board's policy manual that currently exists,
Mhm.
says specifically the board will permit homeschooled students to participate in non-credit bearing organized school activities such as clubs that are not open to the general public,
Interesting.
exact same language.
Yeah.
Participate in band and or receive music lessons only if these activities are considered to be extracurricular, not credit bearing or graded or required for class. That's not the case for us. Those are credit bearing.
Jazz band is not.
Oh, true,
Sure.
true.
Jazz band isn't credit bearing?
No, it's
No.
after school.
No.
They never put it inside the school band. I know, from a music teacher here. I
Former jazz band member.
yeah, me too. Like,
I love jazz
I
band.
know, it's one that I've always listened, oh, that's interesting.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
but wouldn't that fall under bullet one? It's a club, it's extracurricular.
But it specifically is, I mean, if you're participating in band and or receive music lessons, that, I mean, jazz band, it is an extracurricular club that's not credit bearing, but still. I mean, the bullet is still the bullet.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Some
then-
schools had band altogether, like elementary school, for example.
Yeah,
Elementary school band happens before school,
Mhm.
so maybe that's what they're talking about. But the lessons are during school, so.
yeah, I guess it would cover that.
Yeah.
Okay, and that policy is in the NISBA update, or that bullet's in the NISBA update, and then the third one, also in the NISBA update. Use school facilities such as the library, career information center, and gymnasium, if there is mutual agreement on the part of all parties, all involved parties.
When was that adopted, that homeschool policy?
The homeschool policy, it's not that old, last revised 2020.
Hmm.
It first was adopted back in 2003.
Okay.
Amended in 2007, 2019, and 2020. So, yeah, it's been out there for a long time. I don't know when these bullets were added.
Probably 2020, or probably, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know, but, I didn't do that, look back, but in any event, it's in there and it's what we're currently allowing for homeschool. To Matt's point, I think it's kind of hard to say yes to one and not the other.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I assume it hasn't been a problem, or tell me if
I
we've
gotta be
had
honest with
to.
you, I haven't heard, and I haven't solicited any conversation with any staff members, so I don't know, like, I haven't asked, like, like the drama people, or, cause I can't see anyone really having an issue. The one people that I could see maybe having a concern would be people of drama, because that's competitive, you have to apply, so.
Try out.
Yeah.
To try out, so like, same with intramural sports, like, extracurricular sports, you have to try out, you have to do all those things, so I'm just likening it to that. So drama, you have to try out, it's competitive, all the other things are not competitive, clubs aren't really competitive, they're all, enjoyment based. So I could only see that one probably having a point of contention at some point.
Mhm.
If, somebody tries out and they bump somebody from the district and be like, oh, why did you do that? Or that would be where I could see somebody having an issue with it. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah,
You
no,
understand?
no.
But I want to just bring it to you guys so everybody has an understanding of where you would see the issue.
Mhm.
But the other stuff, no. And then the other concern I would have is just bumping, right? If you have limited slots and you can't do it, then there would be the other concern.
Yeah.
Is that you would have to have some type of lottery or some type of expectation saying, we can only fit 25 kids in art club, right? Or art club because of, like, say, space.
Mhm.
So,
Can or should we include a specific preference language that says in the event that there are space limitations, preference shall be given to,
I think you can.
I think
can
you
do it.
can, I would want to have Ryan
Oh,
give us an
100%.
answer
Oh,
on
sure.
that.
Well, I just texted him again, by the way. I said, can you remind me? Can you remind me the guidance on non-public school students participating in activities, sports versus clubs, etc. Like I asked for guidance again, just
Yeah.
because we're talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, since we're currently inconsistent, I
Yeah.
think we need to.
There's an opportunity here to clean up.
And if we do that, preference language, then obviously it would have to be added to homeschool as well, but.
Yep.
I mean, I don't, as a practical matter, even if you didn't have it and you had space limitations, I think as long as your decision-making is, equal
Not
across the
arbitrary.
board, it's gonna be
Yeah.
fine.
No,
Yeah.
I so respectfully, I disagree. Just because we're the ones endorsing it, like if the policy's not there and somebody wants to fight that, they're gonna say, well, your policy doesn't say you can do a lottery. Or your policy says you
No,
can't do that.
that's a good point.
Like, we don't have that backing, and
Sure.
sometimes that backing
Whatever you
for
feel
us,
more comfortable with.
sometimes that backing for us is very important, right? Because that allows us to say, no, our policy states
Yep.
the lottery, just like
Okay.
with UPK right now, the lottery is, there's a lottery, you don't get to say economic levels or anything like that. So I just wanna,
Mhm.
I think having that at least stipulated in there, one way or the other, that, in case that does happen, would be something I'd wanna look for. Just as a protection factor for us. I can check with Ryan.
Would you?
And so those are the two things that I think people would have issues is capping.
Yeah.
And preference, and then anything that's competitive,
Mhm. Yeah, oh,
I
yeah.
think that would just be something that people would have to be aware of.
I mean, worst comes to worst, I think again, as long as you're consistent and have a reasonable basis for it, you could carve out particular clubs.
But-
I don't know that we want to get into that business,
But
but I
again-
think it's an option.
But I guess, again, if you're a homeschool student, if you were here, you would have the opportunity, but if not, you may not have an opportunity to participate in a play, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And, it's a preference of the board at this point. We're a non-public school student, they may not have plays at their district. So I'm just using plays because that's the only thing I can think of that's
Yeah.
competitive besides sports.
Yeah, so, okay, so we have some work to do on that. And
Yeah.
it sounds like, Frank, you're gonna reach out to Ryan.
Yeah, yep. It's
And
on,
ask
it's on my list.
those questions about, like, can we establish a preference if we're oversubscribed, and how do we handle
Competitive.
competitive
Mhm.
I could just-
clubs or-
I'm just wondering, knowing these teachers and drama teachers from being in that, I could see that just being something that would be brought up by people.
No, I think that's obvious.
It's just probably
Yeah.
them.
I mean, another one would be like Science Olympiad, right?
Oh, I didn't think of that
Like-
either.
Yeah. Yeah, Odyssey.
Odyssey,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Science Olympiad this year, we had 2 teams because
right,
Yeah.
because one team was oversubscribed,
right.
right?
So Science Olympiad, Odyssey of the Mind is by PTA. Oh no, that's us, because we pay for the advisory. So
Yeah.
no, yeah, no.
Yep.
Yeah, no, those are all good points. So there's more than that.
Yeah,
Lego
okay.
club, right? But, things that are dependent on size, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we'll
Yeah.
come back to 1740, 1741.
Yes.
And like 1741 is not yet in our policy folder. Depending on what you hear from Ryan, just let
I
me
will
know
add
if we
it,
should create a folder for that and then make the revisions.
My goal is to touch base with them today or tomorrow.
Okay, great. All right, so the next one we have is 4765, online distance and remote learning. This is also a NISBA update. Um, I'll let you pull it up,
Thank
Frank. So this policy was updated to reflect state regulations on remote instruction during emergency school closures. And there's a bunch of references in here, Frank, to the fact that, beginning with 23-24 school year.
Yeah.
School districts must include emergency remote instruction plans in their district-wide school safety plans.
We have them.
I thought we did.
Yeah.
So that was one question I wanted to confirm.
They're very generic. wait, they're there.
but they're there.
Yep.
Yeah, good. Offering remote instruction during emergency closures is optional. So this is not something that we need to do, and this, I believe, would be a new policy for us. Let me double check that. I looked at that last night.
And I
Yeah,
respectfully, this would be, I do believe this would impact collective bargaining a little bit as well. Because last time that we had this conversation, people were like, well, what does it mean? How do we do it? Where do we do it from? What does blended look like? And how do we have those conversations? So there is conversations in there that could not silo here.
Yeah.
You know, just to be, very honest with you, I could see this being, some collective bargaining concerns, which rightfully so, right? Because it does change the format of the way that you do things a little bit.
yeah. So for this one then, given the collective bargaining concerns, do
I
you
can
want
bring it
to,
to the unit.
I was gonna say, do you want to bring it to the,
Yeah, I do a labor
unions?
management unit meeting monthly, so I can add this to the agenda for the next time to see if they have any concerns first.
yeah,
Because again, then we can bring that up.
yeah, I think that would be a good way to proceed on this one.
Perfect.
The policy itself, to me, there's not a lot in here that I would find particularly controversial, of course, other than the fact that we would be having teachers required to provide remote instruction, potentially during emergency closures. But
Because when I had the opportunity during the snow days, that conversation came up.
yes,
And they had valid questions, right? And I was like, well, I'm not gonna plan on doing that because I feel like for a one day, is a squeeze really worth it?
Yeah.
For a snow day? Yeah.
So this would be like, if we have like crazy snowstorm, we've exceeded our snow day allotment, and now we are
Correct.
eking into.
Right. So let's say we have like, God forbid, a fire, where you can't use your building.
Right.
Right. Or COVID again. COVID, we have stipulations.
Right.
In our emergency plan, but things like that. Like if you're over your 3 days.
yeah, I mean, like the wildfires last year were like pretty scary too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Right.
we
But
had
you always
days
then
where-
just take away a vacation, right? I mean, there's your other options. Instead of doing the remote, you just extend. But
Yeah,
again,
but what if
If
it
it happens
happened
in
in
May.
June?
Yep, yep.
Right?
No, no,
When
There's
we're,
nothing left.
there's nothing left to
Right.
take away.
and you could lose funding because that's
Right.
the option that happens, right? No, makes sense. So let me bring that up with them.
Great.
Okay, yeah, I
And it
think,
will be this is the teachers union first, not the non-instructional.
Yep.
So I'll bring this up with the VTA.
okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I don't think it's very controversial. It's basically trying to provide a standard for and set expectations for how students conduct themselves when they're learning remotely.
I just want to make sure that I'm not doing anything that inadvertently causes an issue.
Yeah, no, totally understand. I
Yep.
think that's the right path. Okay, the next one we have on our list is 8131. So this, we also do not have, let me double check that. We do not have an 8131. Which is called pandemic planning. So when I was reading this, I was kind of like, okay, the law requires us to put this in our safety plan. We have, like, I don't know that there's much in here.
It's not required.
No, it's not. It's not required. Right, like what we are required to do, we already have. And it says in here, the law was written, the education law requires the inclusion of specific, this is the old note, right? Because we probably missed an update here somewhere along the way. The old note says this policy addresses pandemic planning for school districts. Education law requires the inclusion of specific pandemic preparedness protocols in the district-wide school safety plans. We did that. this law was written to apply to employers generally, not school districts specifically. This policy includes language referencing the requirements of the law and temporarily suspending board policies to the extent necessary to comply with any EOs or other guidance from the government. The new note says they've modified this policy to refer to the required emergency remote instruction plan, which we have, right? So really not a lot different. Like I assume what's in here, implement infection prevention control procedures in the safety
It's
plan,
already there.
right? Work with school administrators, blah, blah, blah. And it's to develop the plan includes, we already have this. I don't, and then 3, facilitate discussions with negotiating units about whether you need to bargain this. I don't really think we need this. I'll open it up to others, but it's, like I said, it's a NISBA update. We don't have it. I don't think there's anything harmful in here, but everything that's required by law, we're doing.
Mhm.
Thoughts?
Is it just basically a regurgitation of what we're required to do and are doing anyway?
Yes. That's my reading.
Yeah, it just doesn't, it,
I don't like missing NISBA updates, but this is one where I'm like,
it's.
like
Yeah.
we've
You don't
already,
need to have every local one that they ask. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, there's not anything in here that we're not already doing as
By law.
required by law. And this doesn't add anything. There's
Yeah,
no,
I
like,
think that's the point. It doesn't add anything.
there's
It's-
no like board opining on a policy direction. It's just regurgitating the law.
Right.
Uh,
I mean, my 2 cents is, we're doing it already. The policy, usually a policy is either you don't have the procedure and you need the policy to help guide the procedure, or your procedure's not working and you're creating a policy to help that procedure work better. The law is already stating what it is. It doesn't make sense to have a policy that already tells us we have to do it.
That's kind of where I am. So I'm happy to just say we've reviewed the NISBA update and determined that we don't require a policy. We're already doing all of these things and we've incorporated it into our safety plan.
Yep.
Pardon me.
Okay, so the next one is 8140, the unsafe school transfer choice. This is the one I was mentioning before.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which has language stating that, you want to explain, like give the overview, Frank, on what this is?
Yeah, so the school has to be labeled an unsafe school, right? So, and it deals with like threats and violence and your Vader and your gas and all those other things. And we are not considered one of those school districts. We're not labeled one of those school districts.
Who does that labeling? State ed?
The state ed is
Okay.
based off of our reports. And again, it's like, homicides, fights, there's a lot that goes into those things in comparison. And there's not a ton of schools that are labeled that throughout the state, by the way. So what, if you are considered that, then you're able to have the unsafe school transfer law that goes along with it. So it doesn't really impact us at all in that regard. And on top of it is we do not have any non-publics in our school district.
Yeah, so it really doesn't,
Yeah, and
Apply to
and by the
us?
way, it's violent crimes,
right,
right? So persistently dangerous schools or students who have violent crime offenses on school grounds. And, those are serious, like it's not, you have to have,
It's a pretty short list.
yeah, they're not large lists.
so the first part of this policy doesn't really apply to us because it's all about being designated an unsafe school.
Mhm.
And like we were talking about before, if you don't have another school in your district that you can transfer someone to, you don't have this obligation under the law. The end of this, which if you scroll to kind of the bottom,
And Meg, you were just on the commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but there's two. So this right to transfer arises either A, if the school has been labeled, or if there's
Violent.
been an individual or discrete incident.
Yes, and I've
Okay.
recently confirmed what
Yes.
violent and criminal offense is, and it is a
Pretty egregious.
serious, egregious, yes.
yeah, I think it's stated in here. It's,
Is it in here? Sorry.
I thought it was, maybe I read it somewhere else, but victim of a violent criminal offense, and that includes like sexual assault. Yeah, it's, I thought I read it somewhere, but
I just didn't want to say all the things at 8:30 in the morning. That's all.
yeah.
Sure.
It's a pretty
That's all right. No, you guys got it. I just,
former sex crimes prosecutor, so I can say all those words. Okay, all right, so yeah, basically the whole first section of this doesn't really apply to us. Then there is the section towards the bottom. I think it starts on page basically page 4. And it says, and this is what we currently have in our 8140. In accordance with district procedures for the reporting of violations that constitute crimes, the building principal or designee shall promptly notify law enforcement, superintendent of all reports, right? So this is all sort of general stuff that has to do with what happens when you have a violent incident that constitutes a crime happen within the district. This language that I just started reading is what is in our current 8140. And I compared the two, and there's really nothing new in here. So I don't think there's anything for us to do unless someone else has thoughts. Like, I mean, so here's the other thing, our 8140, if you look at it, it has a different title, which is fine. It hasn't been touched since it was adopted March 3rd, 2003. So if we want to somehow reflect that we looked at it, like we could make a tweak somewhere in here, just to have it updated and have the policy manual reflect that we've actually paid attention to this. But really, it doesn't.
so I've always had a question on this, so maybe I'll ask it now is, we do these reviews, right? And then we don't, is there a way that we can just write reviewed on the policy without having it go to the board and then it just gets updated? Or do we, it just makes sense that if you're doing the work and you had it reviewed, because think about it, and from 2003, let's say 5 years from now, somebody comes back and they look at it, oh, last time they checked it was 2003, say the whole table switches, right?
Right.
Somebody's might gonna go, at least it says review 2020. I feel like that might be.
It also makes the work of the committee in the future certainly like much more effective and,
Maybe we should start writing reviewed on these. It's been something that's been like I've been thinking about,
I don't see why not.
right?
Um,
No changes, just reviewed.
and you're right, it kind of dispels any belief that, oh my gosh.
you're right, you haven't touched this
What
in
are they
years.
doing?
Right, because I mean, when I came in, like, oh my God, 2003, and somebody's, no, we reviewed that before, we just didn't make changes. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Want me to have just switch it to reviewed, like, you want me to check with the attorney?
Would,
No, I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, it's our manual, right? We
Right.
can Say
We
whatever.
reviewed it, that was it. It's not,
Mhm.
there was no changes.
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent choice, especially, yeah, because otherwise we're spinning wheels. We're just devoting more time to
Yeah.
something when it's,
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it hasn't been touched since we adopted our
Yeah.
manual.
Right.
The language hasn't changed, doesn't need to change.
Exactly.
So, I'm fine with, like, I can mention in the April board meeting that we're gonna start adding a
Yeah.
new, like,
Yeah.
status
Yeah.
to policies that we,
It makes sense,
Review.
right?
and going forward, right, we're not gonna retroactively go back to any of the work that we did at the beginning of this.
yeah. I
School
think we
year.
need to. Okay.
I just asked Jess if she could update the policy even for you to add that it was reviewed with the state on the date it was reviewed. And just add it to our manual.
I think that makes sense. I mean, then it's like the record's just clearer in terms of,
Yeah. And it was brought up once
It's
before,
almost
a
like a
couple years ago, and we
readoption,
didn't do that for
right?
some reason,
Yeah.
but see, it's not a readoption because then we would have to readopt it,
Right.
right,
right?
right,
Mhm.
So that's where this is just a review by the policy committee.
yeah. Yeah, okay. So that is pretty much everything I wanted to get through on the policy front. I thought we should spend a couple minutes kind of planning for what we want to do next.
Mhm.
We've got on our agenda, so hopefully, as far as like groupings of policies, we had.
Everybody's good with me taking our faces off, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. We had the board organizational policy section. I think with guidance from Ryan in our April meeting, we'll be able to close those
Mhm.
out and get them all done this year. We have a grouping of policies that I put in our, agenda, our kind of running agenda. So we've got, transportation policies. So there's a whole group of transportation policies that have NISBA updates. That I think we can look at as a group at some point. Like, I'm not saying we have to prioritize those, because we already have policies on all of these. Like, I don't think there's anything critical. But they've come up with, for updates from NISBA, so I think we should look at those as a group. We also have a bunch of, what I would call like safety policies. So we've got like use of surveillance cameras. Remember what the other ones are. See if I can find them real quick.
Is that included in the NISBA quarterly updates section?
Some of,
Okay.
yeah, but they're kind of spread out. I haven't pulled them all together.
Oh, understood,
Um,
okay.
But like, extreme heat condition days, I think the law is gonna change on that soon.
Yes, it
but,
is. It has
um,
changed.
Yeah, so that's another one.
Mhm. Yep.
So we've got, and like, the ones I pulled in today, I was previously including in the safety policies, like pandemic planning, unsafe school transfer choice. I moved those. They were old NISBA updates, and I wanted to make sure we got to them. But there's a couple more stragglers in the safety policy category. We've got the transportation policies. We've also got all of the like grading policies, valedictory class
Yeah.
policy that I would like to get back to
Mhm.
while I'm still on this committee. Um,
What about the code of conduct reviews? Because
yeah,
I feel like we always do that one.
we do it late, so that would be a good one. Usually we end up doing it in like May.
I know, I feel like maybe we
Um,
want to start that a little bit earlier,
we could do that in the April meeting.
Mhm.
right? Just at least to start, maybe, do you want me to invite anyone to that, or do you want to do that first with us?
That's the one we did before in the library.
Right, with the admin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think so.
Let me see if I can get a couple
And-
items. I don't know, I just feel like we've done it late.
There are things that we talked about
Yeah.
with admin in the library that we haven't yet made updates for.
Yeah.
There was the discussion about like hoodies and it being potentially like a protective,
Right.
hairstyle issue, like, so there are things like that that we haven't yet addressed. But if we wanted to tackle that in the April meeting,
Or even just starting like an outline of it, right? You even like do like half an hour of a conversation of outlining items or, in it. I don't know, I just feel like
could we invite the same group that we had in the library session?
yes and
to-
no. For this meeting,
Yeah,
my only concern is it's 8 o'clock in the morning
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a large group of admin, which
Yeah.
I'd be taking them out of the building for.
yes,
Yeah.
I get that.
No.
So I could do them possibly virtually, so that way if they, I don't want to take Jeff away from his building,
Right.
Understood.
and that's all. So there's
Should we schedule a different session? Kind of like the one we did before and
like an after school
actually,
one.
I say we could do an afternoon one
yeah, like
instead.
do an afternoon one where we like come back together with their feedback and, I could read it, but we can highlight the specific sections that were touched on the last time we met. And then walk through each of those sections and whether there are language changes that they would like to see.
And we think that our two new principals have enough
Oh, yeah.
under their belt that they're ready for
I mean,
this.
they've had a year to evaluate. I think they can add more
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna speak to them at my cabinet, and then I'm gonna get some possible dates.
Okay.
And if you wanted to, I mean, even if we already have policy for April, we could just say, flip it to a night one, or I don't know, I'll ask some times that they could be available.
Yeah, ideally, I
Would
think
have- Yeah,
if we could meet with them before our next policy meeting.
Okay.
That would be best, because then we can make sure we're good with the revisions before we
Yeah.
propose them to the board. And I think it would have to be the May.
or even we do June again, and if there's something that comes up where we have to go back to like shared decision-making groups or.
Yeah,
anything.
we just.
I just want to make sure there's enough time for, my only concern is if we do it, I feel like we do it so late that we're creating a really nice shared decision-making model in the district that we've been building on over a few years. And if there's something to come up in April or May, and then the building principals want to bring it back to their shared decision-making teams, we don't have an opportunity to do it in time. That's why I'd like to get it done a little earlier.
So I'm thinking for April, we're gonna have some of the our April meeting.
Yeah.
We're gonna have some of the follow-ups from Ryan that we can tackle. Can we also, in that meeting, plan to do the required reviews? Because we have all these policies that now have
Yeah.
annual required reviews in the law.
Yeah, do you remember what they are? That's it.
I know you have a list, because you've sent it to
Yeah,
me.
I'll ask Jess to help me get the required reviews.
But let's like pull all those and try and have
Yeah.
things ready for
Mhm.
May or June.
All right, so let's do it. April, we'll do.
Or we
required
can even
reviews.
queue them up for, like, if we've done them this year, we might have, like, we can queue them
Yeah.
up for
We'll get the required
July.
review list. I think Trisha did a really nice job putting it together.
Yes,
So we'll do the required review list, code of conduct. Those are me. Good cabinet. Good. And the valedictory class, you want me to invite in the guidance counselors or anything like that? We'll schedule that time frame.
so we've already met with them
Yeah.
and they gave us great feedback. We haven't taken a crack at revising
Right.
those policies based on that feedback.
So do you want to take a crack at it next time?
I don't think we're gonna have enough time,
Okay.
but yes. I'll put that as our next.
Let's do like May. Let's put that on the May agenda and say like, I mean, I feel like we should just schedule it and say we're doing it here. But we push out and back.
So, yeah, I would include in that, we've got grading policy, valedictory class.
The grading policy, I think I'd like to push out first because the buildings are doing a lot of work on that. So
Yes, I know that's on your list.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's, I'll put it as a placeholder for April, but chances are it's gonna be May.
Yeah.
Cause I don't think we're gonna get through everything that we have.
Okay.
I think for the required policies, if we all look at those ahead of time, and then we just come with any changes, we can probably tick through those pretty quickly, with the exception of code of conduct.
Just trying to think of the easiest way to do the required policies is like we do it like on the policy manual itself and just type it in and review it then. Do we create
Yeah,
a sheet first?
we might have folders for all those.
Right.
Already,
Or if I have just create hyperlinks
yeah.
based
like
off of
one
the policy
email-
and then it's one email with all the
One
hyperlinks.
email with all the hyperlinks, and then just bring your comments.
Right. And then when we can even do it then, I just click on the hyperlink, we read it quick. Oh yeah, no, this is good. No, we'll change it. Instead of going through and creating policies and like.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we'll have a record of which ones we looked at. Okay. And then maybe in May, we'll get to the transportation policies.
So,
We are really ticking through the NISBA updates. I would like to get to the point where we're just current with this and that kind of becomes our agenda. We're like close to that right now, but we'll get there. Okay, I think we're good for today.
yeah, awesome.
All right, so we'll adjourn our policy meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.